Today we are back to work preparing the first gen Tacoma camper for the trip out west to Colorado, and I've got a couple things in mind for today. One of which I want to work on the electronics. So I have this DC to DC charger which charges the Blue right there, and I don't like the fact that it just sits on the floor here. So I want to try and create a panel to mount it, and then I also have to want to clean up like a lot of this wiring that's just over here, put some conduit around it to clean it up and organize that. But the difficulty I'm having with this back here is I wanted to look at getting a molly panel that sits across the back panel that sits near the cab. However, they don't make them for the V2 Pro yet, and you can modify the ones for the V2, but they're still like $400 for just a CNC cut piece of metal. Which, you know, I'm not gonna knock anybody for their profession. I don't have a CNC machine, and I'm sure the machine costs a lot and it costs a lot to make stuff, so I'm not gonna knock anybody, but I can't justify spending $400 on a panel that I'm gonna have to modify to get to fit this. So in order to make this happen, let me switch up the camera angle here. Now on the GFC, there's a number of these holes here along the frame that you can stick a bolt in and mount stuff to. There's some up here kind of hidden behind this wiring. So my thought process is I want to basically take this Blue Charger 1 and mount it up here somehow. And then I have another device coming in which I want to mount on the other side, I think, unless I may have room to mount both things over here. But basically what I'm getting at is I need to create a panel that is going to utilize this bolt hole and this bolt hole. Now, originally I was going to pick up something like some PVC, like 1/2-inch PVC sheeting, and I was gonna do this entire panel and basically create my own molly panel, and basically just cut to size and then probably cut out a section so that way you could still see through the glass here. However, I went to Home Depot today for probably like closer to an hour. I found what I was looking for material-wise, but everything was 2 feet by 4 feet, and 2 feet would work here, but literally the distance down to the millimeter, or what would that be, the eighth in inches, whatever, down to the exact amount is 2 by 4, and this here to that one on the other side is 4 feet exactly. So everything that I was looking at was gonna be too short. So that left me with the option to basically buy an entire sheet of plywood, a big 4 by 8 foot sheet of plywood, and I just don't want to do that. I don't want to spend that much money on it because it's going to be difficult to cut out this glass and whatever. I'm not going that route. So what I'm thinking is cutting out a piece of plywood that's going to utilize this hole and this hole to bolt through, and then I'm going to basically cut it so that way it goes from here and then all the way up to here, and then kind of tapers along this bar here. So that way all of this is going to be filled with plywood, and I can then take my Blue charger and mount it somewhere up here. And then if that works out well, I can build a second one for the other side, do the exact same thing, so that way I can mount more stuff over there. So that's kind of the plan. It's going to be a little daunting because there's a lot of angles here that need to be cut correctly because I want to make it look good. I don't want to make it look jank. So that's the plan, is to do a bunch of the wiring and stuff today. So I'm talking way too much, let's just get started. So let's start with something that's a little bit easier, more attainable, and kind of build up some confidence for the day. So I want to obviously clean up all this wiring on here. And this is wiring for the lights that go all the way around the camper, and also have the third brake light wiring coming down here. So I want to tidy this all up so we don't have just this conglomerate of stuff going on. Let's go ahead and cut these zip ties here without cutting wire, because that would suck. And then this is the conduit I'm going to be using to hopefully wrap most of this up. Stuff like this is going to be tough to get in the conduit, but I'm sure it's going to look better than it does currently. And this stuff, if you've never installed it, is really easy. Well, for the most part, it's kind of tedious, but it's got a opening on both ends, obviously, and then the whole thing is slit down the middle so you can wrap up all of your cable inside of it. Now here is the after. So I wrapped everything up in conduit, re-zip tied it on, So that gets all cleaned up. And then I moved the controller from here, pushed it and retaped it onto the frame a little bit closer to there. And then I had a bunch of excess wiring, which maybe you can see I just tucked up all underneath here. And that works out really well. Okay, well, it started to torrential downpour and thunder and lightning, so I hopped in the truck here, and while I was working on that other harness, the TV's kind of in the way, but you have this bracket that goes from this crossbar up here to this one. I think GFC calls it like the banana bracket because it's kind of shaped like a banana, and I noticed it was loose, so I'm basically just taking the mount off, putting some new blue thread locker on it, and reinstalling, just so that way it's tight again. And I've heard some stories about these when they come loose and they rock around for so long that they actually like de-thread, or they break or ruin the threads on the inside of this because there's not a whole lot of threads there for this to grab onto. So basically just trying to be proactive by fixing this first and tightening it up, so that way hopefully when we're off-roading it doesn't get all destroyed, or it doesn't destroy all the threads and rip itself out, because then you'd have to like re-tap the metal, add a new thread cert in there, and then put bigger it'd be a whole thing. So in an effort to combat that, I'm gonna try and just tighten it down, put some new thread locker on it. Happy days. Okay, all done, and it is absolutely downpouring, so may have to move the truck into the garage to continue work because a package just showed up for actually two things just showed up, which I'm hoping to install. So this Tennessee weather, man, it's like hot, humid, and then absolutely torrential downpour. And then in probably 30 minutes, it's gonna be sunny, hot, and even more humid. So that's sweet. Can you believe it? 2 unboxings in a row. This is a OBD2 diagnostic tool that is going to, plug. Yeah, that's everything. That's all of it. So it's this little OBD2 plugin that's gonna obviously plug into my OBD2 reader on the truck. And what this allows me to do is basically monitor a whole bunch of metrics on the motor and the truck as I'm, without having to plug in like a OBD2 tool. So by the way, this is made by a company called Toyota. They develop mainly head units for vehicles, but which I have installed on my truck. They were kind enough to send me one out months ago, and so far it's been an awesome upgrade to have. It's a nice double-din stereo head unit, but it also has what's called the Torque app. And this little Toyota OBD2 tool pairs with your truck or your car and the head unit's Torque app, and you can monitor a whole bunch of stuff, including, like coolant temp, oil temp, I believe. It really depends on what capabilities your car has and what information it sends through the OBD2 port. Most importantly, I picked this up because I had a check engine light pop up on my last filming trip up to Virginia. On the way home, I popped a code about halfway, probably like 4 hours from home, and had to jump over to an Advanced Auto Parts like literally 5 minutes before they closed, and had them, or used their scan tool to scan it and see that it was a P0420 code, which is a catalyst efficiency code, which could be a number of different things, but essentially the O2 on the behind the catalytic converter is detecting that it's not the appropriate mix of gases. Basically, either the catalytic converter is not doing its job anymore, there's an exhaust leak somewhere. Long story short, I cleaned the MAF sensor, the mass airflow. I cleaned the throttle body on this thing with some seafoam, and I reset the code, and it's been about 140 miles now, and it hasn't come back on. Though it's mainly been trips around town and not like long highway distances, so I'm not totally convinced it's not gonna come back on. So anyways, I picked this up. It's only like 20 bucks on Amazon, and this will allow me to actively read metrics from the truck as well as read check engine lights, so that way I can see as soon as it pops up without having to go to it advance, figure out what the check engine light is. So installing this should be quite easy. On the first gen Tacoma, the OBD2 port is right there. And as soon as I plugged it in, the light illuminated, so I imagine that's a good sign. And hop in the truck, kind of fire it up and see if we can pair it with the head unit. I'm sorry for the not great camera angle. Hopefully you guys can see the screen all right. So I plugged in my device. We can go to the torque app on the ATOTO head unit, and it's all paired up, and we can do things like see real-time metrics. So we can see revs. So that just jumped up. We can see our speed, we can see our coolant temp, we can see accel, throttle, imagine maybe that's throttle angle or throttle percentage, vacuum, and you can add a whole bunch of other different metrics onto here, which is really nice. But one thing I noticed is up here, there's this little panel that shows your emissions readiness, and all my systems have finished except for catalyst. So O2 sensor is complete, but catalyst is not, and I'm wondering if once that completes, my P0420 code is going to come back. So I'll have to do more driving in order to complete that cycle, but let's see if we can go back, and we can actually check the fault codes. So instead of going to an advanced auto parts, we can just use this device to read our codes. So right now I have actually another code, a P0172, which is a powertrain code. System is too rich on bank 1. I don't know exactly what that means yet. Obviously the motor's running too rich. So I don't know if that's an incorrectly gapped plug, some sort of maybe a misfire of some, I don't know, whatever. We're gonna have to figure that out. But we should be able to actually clear faults from the ECU. So I'm just gonna go ahead and clear that out. Actually, I'll hold off because I wanna do some research on this, but this is awesome. So having this OBD tool is going to be extremely helpful on this trip. That way, if something does happen with the truck and check engine light comes back on, I can more closely monitor things and hopefully repair it a little bit faster if need be. So very excited about that. And next up, I want to probably jump on building those DIY molly panels, I guess we'll call it, for the back end, so that way I can start to mount some stuff. All right, after sweating a bunch and doing a lot of maths, I was able to get this piece cut out. So what this is gonna do is I've drilled a hole here and a hole here, which correspond to this and this. So if we put it up to here, it's gonna sit something like that. My thought process is now what I should be able to do is flip this like this. And I've already checked it, and it bolts up on that side. So now I have a piece for that side that I just have to trace and cut out onto some more plywood, and then we've got both pieces cut. So that's the hard part's done, I would say. The math was difficult to figure out because you have this angle here, and then figuring out how far down. So I basically like figured out this angle, and then figured out how far I wanted to go up, and it's probably hard for you to see it, but I tried to match the crossbar, this support beam here, so you can still see some of the support beam, but this edge follows the support beam up, so it kind of looks symmetrical. And now in the future, if I wanted to, I could take this piece and maybe get like some PVC sheet or even maybe aluminum, something like that, and redo it. And now that I have this cut out, all I got to do is trace it, cut it, and then we can upgrade it to not wood. But for right now, I think wood's gonna be perfect because the DC to DC controller is gonna just get basically screwed in somewhere up here, like that. And wood screws, call it a day. I was gonna put some like speaker carpet over this, and I still might. I'll have to see if I have enough left, but worst case scenario, I'm gonna stain it with like a gray stain, so that way it kind of follows the neutral colors that are going on in here. So I'm gonna trace the other side out, get it cut out, sanded, and we'll be on our way. Tell you what, drying this paint in like 80% humidity, not ideal, but I put a ton of layers of this primer on, and I think I'm gonna leave it just with this gray primer. I was gonna do black paint, but to be honest, I think the gray is gonna kind of match more of the GFC paneling anyways, because if you really look at it, it's probably a lot lighter. Let me grab the piece. Yeah, the GFC is a little more blue, but I mean, come on. I think in the shadows of inside the GFC, this is gonna be much better. So after a lot of sweat, a lot of math, and a lot of work all day, we finally have some panels on the GFC that I can mount stuff to. So we've got the Bluetti DC, but let me bring you in closer. So right in here we have the Bluetti, and then moving up we've got the Bluetti Charger 1, which is a DC to DC charger, so it runs power from my alternator while I'm driving into the Bluetti to charge it. And we now have it mounted up on this nice little panel. So whereas before I had it just sitting on the ground here, and I don't really get water intrusion here anymore, but that is a spot where water was coming in that corner back there. So I was always worried that the Charger 1 was gonna get wet, but now with it mounted all the way up here, should be in good shape. And I think the panels came out great. I mean, they were definitely a lot of work trying to figure out the angles of everything and how to set it up with this angle and the crossbar, but between that and just leaving the gray primer on it, I think it looks pretty dang good. Maybe something I would change would be adding black to the very bottom, because you can see that the black frame runs across it. So I might paint the bottom black just so it kind of blends into the whole GFC a little more, but overall, very happy. And now that I have these templates, I could actually buy, you know, some sort of like ABS plastic, or like I was saying earlier, maybe metal or something, and actually make an entire frame around this thing and have a lot more mounting options. But for now, for this trip, these are gonna be perfect. I need to go take a flippin' shower and change my clothes. I've sweat through this shirt probably 3 times today. It has been so hot and humid, but I've been trying to put out more content, trying to get ready for this trip, trying to get all the mods and maintenance done on this rig to hopefully have smooth trails out in Colorado. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm going to be updating you guys more. There's going to be a ton of videos over the next few weeks as I get ready to go on the trip. So look forward to that. And then the trip itself is going to be flipping awesome. Be tons of truck camping videos, tons of wheeling videos, modifications, walkarounds, and we're just going to be going all across freaking Colorado and even a little bit of New Mexico, I think. So maybe Utah too. We're already going to be out there. May as well just push it a little bit further west. So thank you guys so much for watching. I love you all. Keep elevating, my friends. Adios. I'll see you in the next one. Oh, it's going to smell like paint. I should probably just leave this open.